Hello everyone, I'm Jordana Van of Ravenlight Holistic Healing and welcome to Blue Jay as a Totem. Now I have two Blue Jay videos, Blue Jay as a Totem and Blue Jay as a Spirit Guide. This here is the video that you want if you've always been drawn to Blue Jays or have had a lot of experiences with them. If Blue Jay is suddenly just showing up everywhere, but you've never really had any real interest in them, then this video may still be very helpful for you. But it's more likely that Blue Jay is a spirit guide, which is a temporary messenger here to help you with a specific issue, rather than a lifelong teacher. In which case, you'll want to watch Blue Jay as a spirit guide, what it means when you're seeing Blue Jays everywhere, which will be out soon, if it isn't already. And remember, there is a complete alphabetized library of all my videos on my website, www.ravenlightholistichealing.com, making it super easy to see if I've already made the video of greatest interest to you. Also, if you enjoy my work, please consider becoming a channel member. Channel member contributions are one of the things that are allowing me to now use my time to make more videos for you. So this is the most meaningful way that you can show your appreciation. And membership does come with some specific perks depending on what tier you choose. For example, right now I'm only accepting video requests from second and third tier channel members. If you'd like more information about what is included with each tier of membership, or you're ready to become a member now, just click the join button next to the subscribe button, and that'll get you started. If you can't see the join button, which will happen if you're using an Apple product to watch this, I provide super quick, easy, device-specific directions on my website for how to make the join button visible. Just go to the video description and the direct link will be right there at the top. It sounds complicated, but I promise it only takes a few seconds. Also, if you want to be notified every time I make a new video, make sure that you subscribe, then click the little bell icon next to the subscribe button, and then click all. So let's get started, shall we? Blue jays are tough to miss at the bird feeder or in the trees. They're large birds, they're dramatically colored, and they're quite loud. Most of us can quickly identify them by the striking blue coloration and the crest on their heads, which is raised or lowered according to their moods. So first, we need to talk about that color. Every color has a set of qualities linked to it. As blue is the color of the fifth or throat chakra, we're talking about issues to do with authentic, interpersonal, and creative self-expression. This part of the body is nothing less than the channel for the self. So, are we expressing who we really are, what we really feel and think, or are we choosing instead to moderate our voice, or stay silent altogether, for the purpose of attaining a desired outcome, whether that's protecting ourselves and our needs, fitting in, avoiding hurting or otherwise triggering others or being abandoned, or convincing others to do what we want? Because the throat is also one of the channels for creativity, this is also where we make the decision to create from our souls or from our fears. What we're talking about here is all the ways we do or do not speak and express with courageous integrity. The throat chakra isn't just about the way in which we express ourselves to others, but also the way in which we communicate with ourselves. It's the center of judgment in the body. So, do the words in our minds speak patience and love and affirmation, or intolerance, condemnation, and criticism? Basically, are we telling ourselves positive, encouraging things, or are we relentlessly shoulding on ourselves by telling ourselves, I'm recording this in the middle of a thunderstorm, guys, so thank you for your patience. Are we relentlessly shoulding on ourselves by telling ourselves that whatever it is we're doing, saying, wanting, or needing, it's wrong? And we should be doing, saying, wanting, or needing differently. Blue Jay people tend to have quite an issue with the latter. So let's start with the Blue Jay person's issues around interpersonal communication, meaning the way in which they express themselves to others. Blue Jay people tend to be a contradiction in terms when it comes to confidence and self-expression. They are naturally confident, extroverted individuals. They are happiest when they are freely expressing themselves in ways that others notice. And yet they are also absolutely terrified of being judged for doing so. They're also irritated by anything that is not utter, unforgiving honesty, but have trouble being honest themselves. We're not talking about outright lying here, so much as being afraid to say what they really see and feel and believe out of fear of people's responses. One of the best ways to explain this is to talk about the blue jay's feathers, which are not actually blue. Blue pigment in nature is exceptionally rare, and blue jays are actually a sort of brown. A phenomenon called light scattering is what's responsible for the color we see. Blue jay feathers feature tiny pockets of air and keratin, the same protein that makes up our fingernails. And when the light hits these pockets, all the colors of the visual wavelength are absorbed except for the blue, which is refracted. For this reason, we see blue jays as blue. In the right light, an intact blue jay feather will appear blue, but if you crush it, the mechanisms that support light refraction are damaged, and it cannot appear blue anymore. It's the same with a blue jay person. They possess the inherent ability to channel those blue qualities, to speak to themselves and others with confident authenticity, and to do so in a way that really gets other people's attention, that makes people really want to listen to them and trust them, because the vibe they emit is just so pure. It's how they're built. And they tended to be this way as very young children, but their bridge to this energy is really, really fragile. When they're crushed, as tends to happen in childhood and adolescence, it's often the work of a lifetime to rebuild themselves so they can again be the sources of vibrancy that they are intended to be. What does this look like? A good astrological example of the type of woundedness we're looking at here is the person who has Pluto in the first house. Our Pluto placement is where we find our deepest wounds, the psychological damage that interferes with our ability to do the things that would really set us on fire, that would make us feel alive and fulfilled. Those with Pluto in the first house are born hypersensitive to the underlying and often uncomfortable truth of things. Even if they don't understand it, they're drawn to it, and they're drawn to express it. The first house is ruled by Aries, our bold and impulsive trailblazer. They innately want to charge forward, truth banners flying, beckoning others to come after them on this grand adventure of discovery. Alas, as most of you know, truth scares the heck out of your average human being. What the blue jay person saw as a child were often the things that, when they mentioned them to the grown-ups, violated social mores, upset someone's tender sensibilities or outright offended them, challenged their beliefs about how the world worked, or worst of all, singled out the places where the other person was being hypocritical, making excuses, or living in denial. Ouch. On top of this, blue jays are exceptionally clever. They're acrobatic flyers, which in metaphysical terms represents a flexible and creative mind. And they're part of the corvid family, which scientists refer to as feathered apes due to their problem-solving abilities. Captive blue jays have even been observed using tools. So here you have this precocious child whose ability to work through a problem and think critically likely approached or perhaps even equaled that of the parent. Unless you are a very secure individual who's done a lot of self-work themselves, you're not going to enjoy the experience of having a child that sometimes seems smarter or braver than you. Though the child spoke in ignorance, the consequence was usually not praise for their perceptiveness or cleverness, but some form of punishment. They may have been spanked or yelled at or sent to their rooms. They might have been ridiculed, or they may have been rejected or abandoned on some level. They might have been told outright that they were bad people or undeserving of being loved. On a more subtle level, the punishment may simply have been that they saw the look of pain and horror or humiliation on the parent's face and knew that they'd done something to make their parent upset. Whatever the case, the child learned that there was something bad or maybe even repulsive about their natural way of seeing and expressing things, and that if they wanted to avoid being hurt, and more if they just wanted to be loved, they had better not just share what they saw and felt and thought. As a result, they tended to develop a certain secretiveness around those things they inherently sensed were going to trigger others, and they no longer spoke easily or spontaneously. Now, as adults, everything is analyzed before it leaves the lips, even if it's true, and they know it's true. They ask themselves how someone else will react to it. And if they believe the reaction could be an angry one, or the other person might feel hurt, they'll either not say the thing at all, or they'll turn it around in their minds until a quote-unquote safe version is decided upon. This is also called having a lot of Libra in your chart, by the way. In its most extreme form, the Blue Jay person begins to engage in what I refer to as mirroring, in which you determine what it is that the other person is thinking and feeling, and you mirror that back to them so that you'll be liked. Whatever they feel, you affirm that. Whatever they believe, you either claim to believe it too, or you validate the heck out of them for it so that they don't think that you're challenging them. Instead of being you, you are being them. Blue Jays have an exceptional ability to mimic other birds and sounds, from hawks to meowing cats to ringing phones. In the same way, Blue Jay people can perfectly mimic others in order to please them. This is safe, but it's certainly not satisfying, as no matter how much love we get for being someone's mirror, we're not being loved for ourselves. And that's something the Blue Jay person wants desperately. Guys, the way most people react to us is about our vibe more than anything else. Even when our words may sell people temporarily on something we want them to believe or do, their gut is going to tell them when our words and truth don't align. And they're not going to feel good about us. They'll sense our belief in our unworthiness or our desperation or our anger. And they'll have to talk themselves into doing what you want them to do or feeling the way that you want them to feel, rather than doing it with innate joy and ease. Or they might react to you in a way that isn't awful, but you will perceive it that way because you're expecting it. And when you do speak your truth instead of mirroring, you'll also tend to experience a lot more people who are triggered by it, as A, you're expecting it, and again, people sense how we feel about ourselves and tend to unconsciously reflect that back, and B, because you lack the clear connection to higher self that tells you to stay away from these people. On the other hand, when what is inside of you is love, you love who you are and you are gentle with yourself when you make mistakes, you believe you're deserving of good things, and you can give that same grace to others. That is what most people hear and feel no matter what you do or say. When you do run into a wounded person who is triggered by you, love can trigger people too. You tend to recognize immediately that the experience is happening for them and that you're just a participant, not a victim, and you don't lose your connection to self. You send them love and you move on. The best example I have of why vibe is more important than words is my least favorite kind of text message. It's the, "Hey, I've been thinking about you. How are you?" text message. 8 times out of 10, the second I read that message, all I want to do is take a hammer to my phone so the message goes away. Because even though the words sound nice, what the person is often really thinking and feeling is, "Hey, I'm a freaking mess right now and you always make me feel better, but I feel guilty about just coming out and saying that I need help, so I'm going to pretend that I care about how you're doing to get you to ask me how I'm doing, after which I will dump on you like there is no tomorrow." Clearly, I've been through this a few times. This energy feels icky and needy and deceptive. And because I've learned to give myself permission not to subject myself to icky energy, unless higher self says otherwise, sometimes it does, I respond to these messages with, "I'm great, thanks for asking, have a nice day." Since they already feel too guilty to tell me outright what they need, unless I give them permission to dump on me, this tends to be the last I hear from them that day. Nice words, but I still don't want to talk to them. On the opposite end of the spectrum is a very blunt friend of mine. This person sometimes makes fun of me, has asked me maybe once in our long acquaintance how I am doing, and often cuts me off when I'm talking so she can talk. Our personal beliefs also differ dramatically. And yet, I enjoy being around her, and I really appreciate her for being her. She's confident in herself and her beliefs and doesn't feel badly for telling it like she sees it, and that really comes across in her energy. This gal is no one's mirror, and yet everyone we hang out with likes her. She's honestly been one of my biggest teachers. It really is how we feel about ourselves, guys, not what we do or say. What is tricky for those of us who haven't been validated or weren't validated for being us is that we think, because of the way we were raised, that the mirroring mechanism and telling people what we think they want to hear works. After all, when we stopped being us and started being them, the punishment stopped. But this wasn't happiness. It was just the absence of overt pain. We weren't being affirmed for being us. We just weren't being punished for it anymore. Absence of punishment is not love. We need to get out of our comfort zones and take a risk on being us so that we can have the experience we are meant to have and which we've never had before, which is being applauded for being real. And as a side note, when you've been a mirror your whole life and you suddenly start being real, people who are attached to you being the old version of you probably are not going to like it and will try to shove you back into your old box. Or they'll do exactly what you're afraid they're going to do and they'll abandon you. A huge part of this is that you're not functioning on their wavelength anymore and they don't know what to do about it. Also, you're in transition. So while you're trying to move into an I love myself and it's safe to express myself vibe, what you're really radiating at this point is probably, I want to be loved for being me, but I'm terrified that I won't be. Maybe I shouldn't try changing after all. So you're likely to get experiences that validate these feelings right off the bat. The more you work on loving yourself, the more that those who cannot tolerate you being anything but their mirror will fall away. Or you'll feel called to distance yourself, and those who like you for you will enter. This is just an inescapable part of the process. Now, the other way in which Blue Jay people often struggle with self-expression has to do with being an entertainer, performer, or public creator of any kind, whether this is professionally or casually. As I said, Blue Jay people have an inherent ability to channel the energies of the fifth chakra, the throat, in dramatic fashion. Think about how Blue Jays are natural mimics, and we love those who can tell a story and perfectly imitate the people about whom they're talking. My late stepfather was an amazing mimic, and it was one of my favorite things about him. 2, as we just talked about with their capacity to mirror others, Blue Jay people are born with a sensitivity to how others are thinking and feeling. They can tell a story in a way that really brings the characters to life because there's depth for what's occurring for the people involved. They get what makes people tick. Also, we're talking about a bird here, so there's already an emphasis on the qualities of the element air, which represents communication in all its various forms. So as children, Blue Jay people loved to speak and sing and entertain. They're natural storytellers and songwriters and comedians and artists and performers of every permutation. But they tend to be born into families in which this annoys the heck out of at least one parent. These are the families where children are seen and not heard, or a child with confident stage presence is scornfully informed that he's a drama king or attention hog, or the joy and enthusiasm with which he expresses himself is met with the parent saying he lacks talent or is too intense. Blue Jay people often grow up hearing that they are, quote unquote, too much in some way. Or the child may simply be ignored and learn that it is only when they are quiet, demure, and self-contained that they receive any kind of affection or approval. Very often, it's really just that one of the parents feels that he or she is not getting enough attention and resents any attention given by others to the child. Or the parent wishes that he or she was more confident and envies the child. Punishing the child is an expression of their frustration at their own lack of confidence or talent. Or the parent may have been raised to believe that this type of behavior constitutes showing off, and so quenches the child's fire for that reason instead. In blue jays, we witness this type of projection, projecting our own issues onto someone else, or our own perceptions, in the way their activities are judged at the average bird feeder. I can't tell you how often people tell me that they don't like blue jays because they're loud and aggressive or mean. And yet, observing them at my own feeders, and I have 5 in my front yard alone, I frequently see groups of jays feeding together with smaller birds, and the latter seem entirely unbothered. This isn't always the case. Large groups of jays do sometimes drive off the smaller birds, but I've also seen groups of sparrows gang up on single jays and drive them off. Studies actually support that blue jays are not as aggressive as people say they are. In one, it was observed that while smaller birds scatter when blue jays arrive, they quickly come back. In another study, woodpeckers, grackles, doves, and a variety of other birds were observed driving off the jays. There's another factor to consider here: the blue jay's territorial instincts. Blue jays get along well with other jays when they aren't mating or nesting, but they're fiercely protective of their food sources during these times because this is how they ensure the health of their families. They're smart cookies. They recognize that the best way to make sure they can feed themselves and their kiddos is to minimize the willingness of other birds to attempt to access a food source. Also, blue jays are also frequently lambasted for getting together and mobbing cats or dogs or humans they don't recognize that get too close to their nests. But they perceive these creatures as predators. If they didn't protect themselves from predators, there would be a lot fewer jays. So ultimately, what we have here is a combination of factors. Blue jays are bold, and they can be aggressive. But this is a sign of intelligence, strong survival instincts, and family loyalty, not meanness or gluttony. And they are not as aggressive as we think they are. Because they're bigger than many of the other birds at the feeder and louder and more brightly colored as well, we often assume the other birds are being dominated, even when that isn't exactly what's happening. At the same time, they're quite good at doing what is needed to protect themselves, which, if we are the owner of a cat that is being dive bombed, we tend to view the bird as attacking the cat, and not the bird preventing itself from being attacked. Cats kill thousands of wild birds each year. How does this translate for blue jay people? Remember, they're super smart and they badly want to be loved. So as children, they're usually not shy about the spotlight. They know that's where the love is. Love for being authentically them and expressing themselves is food for blue jay people. It nourishes them. But they don't have the ability to choose where they're going to shine. Their world is defined by their parents, siblings, school, religious institutions, etc., and these may not be the right environments for their energy. Remember how people react to their precociousness and to the truth of the things they want to share. They may be stuck sharing with a hostile audience who doesn't want to hear that truth. 2, their behavior tends to set them apart from other children in their environment who are maybe not as confident in the spotlight, nor frequently as eloquent in their expressions. And if other people feel badly that those children aren't shining as brightly as the blue jay child, you're going to have a problem. The blue jay kid's just doing what feels good for them. But because the other kids aren't capable of doing the same, it must be that that blue jay child's behavior is robbing those other kids of attention. Also, it's not just the lack of an appropriate audience, but the inability to recognize who the appropriate audience would be. There is a certain amount of experience that has to occur here for blue jay people to be able to sense the right versus the wrong audience and the right versus the wrong timing. For example, what parent, while attempting to have a relaxing, grown-up conversation with their friends, likes having their child insert themselves into the conversation and begin offering their own opinions or interpretations, or doing the cartwheels around the table? Even the best parents are going to be a bit exasperated. But the Blue Jay kid may not get this and feel shut down. They don't have enough experiences with the right audiences and the right timing to recognize what the wrong one feels like. As grown-ups, we have the ability to choose our audiences, to leave and go elsewhere if the vibe isn't right. Kids largely don't have this choice. And so our Blue Jay kiddos who feel relentlessly called to express themselves in some way are told that they're pushy, show-offs, chatterboxes, etc., or just plain obnoxious or needy. So here you are, a naturally confident, ebullient individual, and now the things that make you feel happiest are labeled bad. This is where the Blue Jay person's unrelenting self-judgment comes from. Their natural yearnings have been invalidated. So anytime they feel the urge to follow them, they become frightened. If the thing that feels best for them is wrong, what are they to use as a compass? They can't trust themselves, and yet they see the truth, and so they recognize that others don't know what's best for them either. So how do they survive? They're always trapped between heart wanting one thing and head saying something else. This leads to rampant overthinking and analyzing, the specialty of your average Taurus and air sign, and a lot of Taurians are Blue Jay people. Every day, tons of their energy gets wrapped up in trying to figure out what they are supposed to do to be worthy of approval so they can feel safe and secure in the world. They're still going to feel alive when they put themselves out there, but afterwards they'll worry that people thought they were selfishly dominating the room, or their performance fell short, or was otherwise upsetting, rather than being truly enjoyable. Lastly, we have a bird that is not shy about defending itself from predators. If we or our cherished pet is the potential predator, most folks leap to judge the Blue Jay. Similarly, if we're the one attempting to dominate the Blue Jay person, we're going to perceive their very reasonable efforts to defend themselves as they're being aggressive. As children, Blue Jay people have a solid understanding of what is and is not good for them, and they will try to honor this. They are very strong-willed. But this usually results in their being told that they're being stubborn or unreasonable when all they're trying to do is protect themselves. Eventually, their ability to defend themselves begins to break down and become something they have to relearn. So how on earth do you deal with all this so you can reconnect with the confident, authentically expressive self that is still inside you, and for which you will often be applauded and encouraged? Blue Jays clearly communicate their relative degree of peace or agitation via the raising and lowering of the crest on their heads. Many birds and animals use body language in such readily obvious ways, but with Blue Jay, we are talking about a bluebird, so there is already an emphasis on communication. And again, Blue Jays are loud. We often hear them before we see them. Direct, clear, and unstintingly honest communication is a big deal for Blue Jay people. Anything that causes you to be less than unfailingly clear, honest, that's where you start. Do you just hope others understand what you need by dropping hints? Or do you ask outright? Do you manipulate by making others feel bad instead of asking for what you want? Do you exaggerate or minimize details because you're afraid that people will judge you for the real situation? Do you sanitize all of your comments to make sure not to hurt or offend? Do you stay completely silent, unable to express yourself at all out of fear of how the other person would react? Do you avoid telling that joke or letting yourself be the center of attention because you're afraid people will be offended or say you're hogging the spotlight or that you're just too much? If you wish you could say or do something different, you need to pay attention. These are the places where we work with our feelings. Feel Feel the tension inside of you when you encounter the clash between my heart wants, but my fear says. Feel, 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 feel. All the guilt, shame, anger, sadness, loneliness, and everything else that comes up inside of you, whether or not you can name it. Without trying to change the sensation, rationalize it, make it stop, or most importantly, tell yourself you shouldn't have it for any reason. When we do this, the emotions eventually run out on their own. They've been inside us ever since we experienced our first wound for being ourselves. And now we're giving those emotions a chance to process. It takes time and patience to process them out completely. Think weeks of feeling, guys, probably months for the big stuff. But when you do finally get all those emotions out of your system, and you will, they won't drown out your higher self when it says, tell that story to make people laugh, or write that post or that song, or express your opinion without analyzing what you think the other person thinks first. Eventually, you'll see that everything you believed was true of the world at large was just part of the mythology of your childhood. And you'll be able to be honest instead of having to talk yourself into expressing yourself truthfully. The key here is always to feel, not fix. It sounds nuts, but feeling alone is what does the work. It naturally removes the emotional blockages so that you just know what is right for you. Trying to think yourself into feeling safe, doing and being what you want will tend to ultimately fail because we can always encounter a new piece of info that makes us doubt our conclusions. I want to add here that thinking is not a bad thing, and you shouldn't be afraid of it. We can use our thoughts to analyze what's going on as we feel, to help us hone in more deeply on what we're feeling and why. This type of precision can make the process go a lot faster, and we'll see that the more we feel, the clearer our thoughts become too. It's just when we choose to exclusively think instead of feel that we get into trouble. The other part of healing as a Blue Jay person is to remember that not all audiences are created equally. Those who really understand Blue Jays and animal behavior in particular don't anthropomorphize them, which is what happens when someone evaluates an animal based on human concepts of morality rather than on the truth of the animal kingdom, which is on the whole pretty darn brutal, guys. James Audubon, our most famous bird watcher, got the Blue Jay's image off to a less than stellar start when he said, "Who could imagine that selfishness, duplicity, and malice should form the moral accompaniments of so much physical perfection?" Blue jays are sometimes discovered eating the eggs of other birds, though nowhere near as frequently as they are said to be. And Audubon's work, which pictured them doing this, ensured that people knew this. And yet we don't think of hawks in such scathing terms when they do the same thing. Audubon was making a moral judgment about an animal's behavior. Something so strikingly beautiful should not kill the defenseless young of other creatures. And so it wasn't a judgment based in an understanding of why Blue jays are the way they are. Those who are comfortable with the truth of the animal kingdom recognize that Blue jays are using their exceptional intelligence to do what they were designed to do, to further the survival of their species, not make nicey nice with the other birds and starve as a result. On the other hand, those who, due to their own wounds, prefer to stick with their ignorance may cling to their beliefs about Blue jays being bad birds and complain about them, but they'll probably still keep putting out the bird seed. No matter how hard you try, some folks are just not going to appreciate hearing the truth, seeing you shine, or being upstaged. That's life. To the best of your ability, learn to trust your higher self to guide you to the right audience and show you the right timing. The more you feel through your fears, the more this ability will develop naturally, all on its own. And remember that ruffling a few feathers, no pun intended, may still be a good thing. With regard to the Blue jay sometimes eating the eggs of other birds, sometimes in the pursuit of your own good, it will seem that you've robbed others of theirs. This is just the way it is, guys. First place can only go to one person. But when we lose, when that other person loses, there is a lesson. And that lesson may simply be that they need to try harder or take the pursuit more seriously next time. Losing is a wonderful motivator. As long as you yourself are moving from a place of genuine joy, not malice, not fear, you're on the right track, even when others get mad or lose out. 2, when you get a handle on your vibe, as we discussed in the beginning, chances are that most people will have a benign reaction to you in these circumstances. So even when they don't agree with you, or they're a gracious loser, even when they're personally upset. And in the meantime, you'll be learning to gravitate towards those who already want to hear your message or who will enjoy your performances. So let's change directions for a bit. First, Blue Jays mate for life, and they stay with that mate year-round. While they may mob together in small flocks during the fall when food is more abundant and there are more hawks around, so allowing them to keep watch for each other by calling out warnings, for much of the year it's just them, their mate, and their nestlings, of whom they are extremely protective. And though they're extra visible in the autumn, they seem to disappear so completely in winter that people sometimes think they've left the area completely. They often haven't. They've just retreated to the forest to keep warm, coming out occasionally to forage. Though the blue jay person loves the experience of expressing themselves, they also need a lot of time to themselves. Just like our blue jays, who are part of a group for part of the year, then retreat to be alone with their partner and family for an extended period, and who guard their space rigorously, even from their own kind. These are our introverted extroverts, who enjoy entertaining others or spirited conversation with like-minded souls, but who also have a lot of introverted qualities, such as hypersensitivity to other people's emotions that tends to wear them out, a lack of tolerance for superficial viewpoints, and a genuine enjoyment of time with just their partners. They have to be able to withdraw, to reground and re-energize, or they'll fall apart. Also, we are obviously talking about incredibly loyal individuals. If you've ever heard the phrase, quote, true blue, it means to be fiercely loyal to something. And so blue jays are true blue in multiple ways. They deeply care about their partners and are attentive to their needs. And the same is true with their children if they have them. These folks make very loving parents. So now we get to my favorite part, the blue jays link to the oak tree and what this represents. Blue jays are predominantly responsible for the rise of oak tree forests throughout North America after the last glacial period. They have a fondness for acorns, and they're able to carry up to 5 at a time, 2 or 3 in their throat and upper esophagus, another in the mouth, and another in the tip of their bill, after which they cache them in holes in the ground where they often go uneaten and develop into oak trees. Most frequently, the oak is associated with the qualities of strength, nobility, and longevity, and with the fairy folk of Ireland, Scotland, England, and Wales. Oaks also feature prominently in Greek, Roman, and Norse mythology and are central to the customs of the Celtic Druids. Though no one has been able to verify the etymology of the word druid for certain, it is widely presumed that the name comes from the Sanskrit word dwir, from which both the words oak and door descend. Many have taken this as an indication that the oak tree is also a door to higher wisdom, and possibly to the other world. So here we have this critter who, simply by nourishing itself, has birthed forest after forest of oaks. Remember that the blue jay person's true food is being loved for being its authentic self, which means speaking the truth of what they feel, who they are, and what they see and believe, and creating things that reflect this truth as well. There is nothing that requires more internal strength or courage than being one's true self, nor is there anything more noble, as it inspires those others who are ready to grow to learn how to be brave enough to be themselves too. We are here to learn how to become our true selves. Additionally, it is when we are no longer fighting the needs of our souls and just flowing with who we are that the magic happens, and we begin to hear spirit and move effortlessly with the divine, and synchronicities big and small abound. We no longer need to make those elaborate plans to make things happen or keep ourselves safe. We just know what to do and we do it. It's effortless. This is the higher wisdom associated with passing through the oak door. Every time a Blue Jay person follows their truth and nourishes themselves, they plant a metaphorical oak tree and open that door for someone else. So much of the pain and unhappiness in the world is based in the ways that we do not let ourselves be ourselves. If we all felt free to simply be us and pursue those things that make us happy without judgment, a great deal of the misery would vanish overnight. We would be kinder people, for one thing, and healthier, too, as the guilt and pain and other uncomfortable emotions that occur when we don't let ourselves be ourselves create an untold amount of illnesses in our bodies. The oak, as a symbol of longevity, also speaks to health. When we align with the oak, we are naturally healthier. We're going to conclude with a short little tidbit from my own life. So oak is one of my own totems. So yep, plants can be totems too. When I was in my 20s, I heard the quote, "Today's mighty oak is just yesterday's nut that held its ground." And it stuck in my brain as though it had rooted there. Though David Icke popularized it, the sentiment has been in print since 1963. And there's an Old English proverb, "Mighty oaks from little acorns grow." Anyway, it took me years to fully understand what the quote meant, but when I did, it really shocked me given my own rampant insecurities. Even if people overlook us or doubt us, even if people think we're nuts, we have it within us to grow into strong, grounded, magical beings like the much admired oak. All it takes is patience and a commitment to grow towards letting ourselves be ourselves. Then, just by being that self, we help others, just as the oak innately provides beauty, food, shelter, and oxygen to the world and its denizens. So, Blue Jay folks, hang in there if you haven't yet found the courage to be yourself. It will happen in time. So I hope this has given you guys a good idea of what it means to be a Blue Jay person. And don't forget to look for Blue Jay as a spirit guide coming soon. Have a wonderful day, everyone. Cheers!